Alright, hello everybody. I've seen a lot of discussion about work offsets versus how do you move to a certain position on your screen or on your with G-Sender. And we're using G-Sender, latest version 1.5.3. Using the alt mill, that's not necessarily important. You could use G-Sender with a lot of different kind of machines, and this is just the main group I follow is the long mill and alt mill stuff. So let me go over how a lot of people really don't understand what a machine position is. And you've heard the term G54. G54 is your main workspace or work offset. Now look up here on G-Sender. You see here you can select different work offsets: G54, 55, 56, 57, and so on. And I went ahead and set these all that way. I do not recommend doing that, because if you forget to turn this back to G54 or something, it's just not real good. And my post processor is set to use G54. I do believe in having that called up in your G code, and I'll try to remember to go in that in a minute. But for now, the easiest way to go to a position that you want to use a lot, and I have a couple of macros that I've set. You can use the jog functions to do the same thing, but when you home your machine, you see these gray numbers right over here. Those are your machine position, meaning from home. Has nothing to do with your G54. You set that anywhere on the table that you want to zero that one, which is in this case on G54. So when you home the machine, you just push home. I've already done that. I guess I'll do that again and show you. And those sensors may not exactly come back to where they were. Now, everyone thinks that's just super accurate and everything. I've found it to be maybe accurate within 5 or 10 thousandths, and it depends on what tool you have in there. Probably also let's check. I've wrote the numbers. I wrote my machine position down here in this lower left. I have it drawn, and let me show you real fast. I've got it opened up down here, and these are the little blocks that I've got set up here that we can call 55, 56, 57 for this example today. And G54 is down here where I was setting the lower left corner, and that's why you use the auto zero touch plate. You can set any of those or check them anywhere you want on this table. And this one here, I already know where this is. But if we rehome the machine, it may or may not come back to these exact numbers, and I'll show you those now. But let's go back to G-Sender and go through this. Alright, so let's just push home right over here, and let's let the machine home. It'll normally remember where your zeros are even after you home, even from the day before, but I wouldn't necessarily trust that 100%. So notice when it homes, these gray numbers over here go to 0. So that is your machine position, 0. So when it's at home, in all three axes right there, those are machine position. Now, I can call a G53, and that will move from a machine position. A G54 will be from wherever you set your G54. Right up here, see where it says G54 and 55 and so on. Those are work offsets. Okay? And that's what your G code is working off of, is your work offset. Now you could always zero everything right there on your machine. I don't like to be on my limit switches working off of that. Things cannot be right. If you have some soft settings in here to where it doesn't allow to get close to those areas, you could run into problems. I don't recommend doing that. Some people do, and they use that for their zero, and that's up to them. Everything's up to however you feel comfortable running it. I just want to show you how this all works out. So now you see these numbers up here in blue represents this G54 here. Now if you'll notice, if I change this to G55, these all change, because this is where I've set this position to be at G55. So that means that's minus 10 inches on the where it's at right now is 10 inches that way, and it's 36 inches in the Y. We won't really trust that too much right now. That's just telling you these are whatever you're set here. So G54, what I've got written here is X is 0.590 from home, so that will be reverse of what you're, that's a negative there, that's actually be a positive here because I'm that far. 590, so yeah, that's the same. 48.762. It's exactly what I have written down, so it did repeat. And so you can trust that. So what I would do is just pull this off of the switches over here. I'll just move it, jogging around manually, keeping the Z up to a safe height. Now I can set macros in here, and I can move to any position I want to if I've recorded these numbers like I have here and written them down. So that's probably the best and the easiest way if you want to move to a position. So in this case, and I've moved in here and I just skimmed these around. I made a code to do that, but I was based off of this position, but I still could find those positions. So let me show you. In this case down here, I've got a macro, so let's pull the macro list up. See the one where I put table 0? And if I click these, I can go in here, and this is where you can write that. It's a G code you write in here. And I know people don't want to know about G code, and they think that I overdo G code. If you don't understand a little bit of G code, you're going to have trouble with running your machine and understanding how it works. That's just simple as that, and it's very simple to know just a few G codes to do this. So in this one I put, now I'm running in inches. If you're running in millimeters, it's almost exactly the same. I can tell you the differences, but in this G code I've got G0, which means rapid move. G90 means we're going to do an absolute move. So that means it's going to be an absolute measurement from that 0 up there to here, not a relative from where I'm at right now. So yeah, I'm off there right now, but it doesn't matter. We're going to go exactly from our home position, machine home position, not our G54, we're talking about machine home. G20 means I'm going to be pulling this up in inches. I'm going to run this in inches. That's important because this machine will go into millimeters when you're jogging around. It'll come into a G91 and a G21 a lot of times. You want to always put in what you, so you know 100% sure what your machine is going to do. G53 right here is the important one. G53 means we're going to go not G54, which is based on our 0 we set, but this is going to be based on our home position. G53 X 0.595, which is what I had written in here. I need to edit that now that I've changed that number. So we'll go for 59 and Y minus 48.762 is what my new numbers. I've changed these today because I've rechecked everything. And that's exactly where it's going to move from there. So I'll go ahead and go update macro. Now all I got to do is pick this out and it will move quickly. You know, make sure they ain't going to wreck into something. If you do this, it's going to move right down here to this home position that I've set in that macro. Now you can set a macro for any of these positions to do the same thing, and I'll show you that in a minute if you want. So let's push this macro right here. This is table 0. That means this corner. Okay, now I'm assuming you can see right here. So I'm going to come down with the Z just so you can see that that really is that position. And I can see it is definitely lined up. The center of the spindle is lined up with that corner. And if you'll notice the numbers now on the grayed out numbers from home is exactly what this says right down here, 0.590 and minus 48.762. and we're not worried about the Z. We will set our Z. I like to set it off the spool board today because I don't want to scratch my spool board, and so I've already set it, but on this right now. But anyway, that's how you move to a position. Set you a macro. Now, just because we moved it here, that didn't set our G54 to be there automatically. Once you move it there, then just go up here on whichever work offset you want to do that on, and go ahead and click your zeros here, Z, and I mean X and Y. And we're not going to play with the Z because we've already set that one here. So now we are set. Our G54 is set right here from the macro that it moved to. So now, since I already set some of these other ones, I'll show you, and I'll show you how I did that. So let's go in G55. If you'll notice, these numbers change. So if I wanted to, I could go in and put, and I could make a macro there, but I don't want to do that. I want to show you how to do that right here. So you can set, we're going to set G55. Now, you can use G55 and some of those just to find, so you don't mess up your zero you set, because when you use this auto touch plate, it's going to set that there, so you don't want to mess up your zero you already set. You can come off of it. Just be sure. That's why I don't recommend doing this, because once you change that, you may forget to come back and put it back to G54, and when you turn this machine off, it's probably going to just stay right there, and the next time you turn it on. So you may not be in the same work offset that you thought you were in. So that's not a good idea in most cases to ever use G55 or any of those. But for this example, we're going to do this because I'm going to show you how to do all that. So we're going to set our touch plate up right here. Now this is for if you need to be really critical. If you don't need to be that critical, just line it up close to that corner or the center, whichever where you want to be, then record those numbers. But let's be accurate today and just show you can be super accurate here. So now I'm going to line up in the center here. I know you probably know how to use this, so I'm not going to go too much in depth here. I'm going to show you. Alright, now I'm going to hang on to this in a minute here, but I'm going to probe that corner of that. I'm in G55 so I can see these numbers. We can also look at these machine positions. So let's push probe, XY, probe right there. I'm going to do this. I'm going to hold on to it and try not to get my fingers pinched. I'm not going to do all of these. It's just too time consuming to show you this, but once you've seen one, you can kind of get the hint here. Alright, so we've set that one on G55 now. Okay. Two things that we've done there that you may want to know or do. You'll notice we're in G55, and this is the board that I was calling G55. I wrote some notes on here so we can write this stuff down. So now that's X0, Y0 on G55, and you're going to have to call that up in your program unless your program is not calling up a work offset, and mine does, so, and I like it that way. So I'll show you how to fix that in a minute. So now see the gray numbers? Those are from your machine position, and just to verify that kind of stuff in your head, see that shows 10 inches up there on the X, talking about from home position. You can take a ruler or whatever and just kind of guesstimate about where that is, and see that it's up about 10 inches. That's about where the home is. I know that's right. it says minus 36 inches. So from the home position back there, which is about the back of my spool board, see, that's right at about 36 inches. So I know that's what, I know it's right. I'm just showing you how to do it, and there's no doubt about it, but that's ways to verify, and you can see that that is right at the corner of that board. So that's set. G55 is set right there. That's 0. Now, if you in your program, that's 0. Machine position is G53, where you can make a macro if you want to. So let's write down these numbers over here, because I'm going to show you how to do a macro on that. So X says 10.112, 10.112. Okay. Y is minus 36. 132. Remember, that's from the home position back there. Here's exactly where that is. Alright. Now let's just pick this up and move it out of the way, because we don't need that anymore, and I'm going to show you how to do that macro. So let's move this anywhere random. It's moving in a random position there. Now remember, I told you when you do that, look at console here, it'll show you some of these G codes it was putting in there when you jog. It put some funky $sign and different things in there, and that's the controller doing weird stuff that you don't. Now that it's called that up, it's going to run in weird stuff, like it's showing millimeters there, X 118, Y 118, feet of 450 millimeters per minute. We're running in inches, so that is going to. If I was to come in here and put X and Y some positions here and run that, it's not going to do what I want it to do, because it's in a funny mode. That's why you want to pull up your G code to make your machine do exactly what you want it to do. So let's pull up a macro right here, and that says right down here, it says add. So let's add, and I'm going to call this G55. Let me write this in capital so you can see it better. G55 board. I'm just going to say board, and then it also gives a position down here to put a description. I'm just going to say move to 55 board. Okay. Now here's where you put your commands. Your G code commands go right here. Remember, the people that think you don't need to know G code, it's useless information, you don't need to know it. You know, people like James Dean Design, all these people that say, oh, you don't need to know any G code. Well, they're wrong. You do need to know some G code. So we're going to write G0. Remember, that means rapid move. You could do a G1 if you wanted to. If you want to move it slow, in fact, I'm not going to overcomplicate this. Let's just say G0, G90. So we're moving absolute move. Now we're going to say G53, which means we're pulling this position from the machine position. G0, G90, G53, G20 is going to be important. That means we're going to be using inches. And now all we need to do is put in where we want it to be. Remember, we wrote these numbers down with these machine positions. So we're going to say X 10.112. I just hit my mouse accidentally. Let me fix that. I got all kinds of messed up right now. Get back and put G20. Okay. Now I'm putting spaces in here just so you can see these. They're not necessary, and they don't hurt anything either. So G0, G90, G53, G20. Now we're going to go X 10.112 and Y minus 36.132. That's exactly the position that is at. Believe it or not. Here we go. We're going to add this new macro right here. Now it's in your list, you know, where you go through all of this stuff down here. All of these things, you can go to your macro list, and when you click that, it's fixing to move, so you better be sure you're ready. It's going to move in a rapid move too, because we put a G0 in there. So now that's going to move to here because we added that macro to move there. So I'll show you right there it says G55 board. Let's push that. And there we did. We've moved to that position. Now, if we hadn't have already went in and set these numbers in here, they wouldn't be there. And so if once you move there and you want to set that as a 0, in whichever, make sure you're selected the one you want it to be in, then that's what you want to do, is go ahead and just hit X0, Y0, because all that did is moved you there, and now you're ready. So you could also put macros to use G54 positions. So in the case that, let's say, now I like to use this 0 and run, and I just machined every one of these square from this G54 position, and I have a let's pull this up right quick and show you. This is what I just got to running, and I'll show you. See the toolpaths? I named it this stuff because that's what I was going to demonstrate here to you, and the G54 is where I'm just working off of for this. So if you'll notice, this is what I just did. So I just cut all of these out. I mean, it thinks I cut them out, but I just went around them is all I did, and that was all based off of G54, and that's what I would recommend, that you would always just draw something in. Now see, I've got my holes here. Well, that's my table right there. So I save this file in here that I can use and rename it anytime for whatever I want to do, and then I can turn off or on, and turn the holes off. I can set things in here. You know, here's my air weight that I was messing with the other day. You can put anything you want in here, you know, and then here's my actual perimeter of the table itself. I have another drawing that's the full work, you know, of all the way to the rails, if I need to do anything like that. But since that's all the way already in there, I can hit any hole on here. I can put screws in here to hit any hole I want to on this table. I can see where they are. If I wanted to drill some holes right there, I guarantee you if I drilled those, they would definitely be where I could just put a screw right in there. Now, I've got double back tape holding these boards down right now, so they're all right. But anyway, that's kind of how I can turn things off. So that way you can just easily grab things and do whatever you want to with those. And that's why I was showing you this. Now you can find these positions here too, but see where I'm zeroed right here? I also drew these in there by finding these positions. So if you look right here, we'll find out what that position is, and it probably changed a little because I machined 30 thousandths off of these. But if you go over here to where it says move, and you have this on the lower left like that, and in absolute, this shows 9.495 and 12.592. That was the original position of that before I machined anything off of it. But let's just see what it shows down here. I got the wrong thing here. Okay. So if I change this back to G54, it says 9.522 and 12.630. And let's see where that says 9.495 and 12.592. So that's wish I could make that where we could see it. Let's compare that to what it is there. So see what this is. I got 9.495. See, so I told you I took about 30 thousandths off of these, and that's the difference you're seeing there now from what we've checked. But that's how you set those, is you can set those off the numbers you check there, and then you can go in your drawing and you can set them exact position, or find the position from here, or if we wanted to zero right there, we could move this down into this position same way, and we could set those positions that way if we want to. that's the nice thing about Aspire VCarve Pro. This is such a good software for finding positions, moving things to a position that we know. In fact, like that, I just was showing you that. So if we want to move that to these positions that we set, we could do that by just saying, look at it right here again. That needs to be in, I've already forgotten what it was, so I'm just going to show you how you can do that. So you know where that is now, you can put that one there. So let's go back to move, and we will put let me jot these numbers down. So that's off of the G54. It's 9.522 and 12.630. All I got to do now is go into my drawing and change these numbers. I'll make sure you're in the lower left right there and in absolute. And we'll go 9.522. So, and Y is 12.63. And apply that. So now those are in that position exactly where that is now. So if we want to do any features on this or anything, that is, we can base that off our G54. And that is the method I'm going to recommend that you always do, and you don't play around with 54, 55, 56. All of these numbers, you can still find your positions and move a G53 if you want. If you have a fixture you set up there and in a week or two you're going to get back to it and you want to move right back to that, and I don't know why you wouldn't just go ahead and find your zero again like that. But if it's something that's fairly non-critical, like I do a lot of kind of building 4-foot pieces, I have a place that I've got a macro set and I can go right back to them. But anyway, that's how that works. I just kind of wanted to show you how you make a macro, how you move to those positions, and you can do that on any of these boards on here. I've done the same thing. You know, there's a G50. In fact, I've got some numbers. No, I didn't write those numbers down, but I can, the same way I can use my drawing and pull them up if I wanted to. Same way I could find this one. It says it's at 16.232 and it's at 24.586. So if I want to find that, since I don't have those numbers anymore, and maybe that's what some of you are talking about doing, is I could actually go in here and make a macro for that, or just instead of a macro, what's probably easier, you could even put it over here at your, let's try that since I already showed you how to make a macro. I was just going to write one from G54 to there, but you could also go home. See that XY right there? Now again, make sure your Z is up in the air. It's not going to crash and something. Push XY and move back to your home position. I'm talking about G54 home, XY0 right there. And you could either make a macro now with these numbers I wrote down from that drawing, or you could put that in your jog feature here. So see this jog positions? Since I know from that position in the drawing, it was 16.232 in X. Let's move the Y first to get it out of my face here. 24.586, so type 24.586 right there in the jog, XY jog. Now let's move the Y up there. And now let's move, because the X needs to be at 16.232. See, we're still at 0 up here on our G54. Now we're going to move 16.232 in the X direction. And there we are. We're right there at the same place that if we would have put a macro, we could do that, or you can look at your drawing and move to those positions that way if you wanted to. But as you can see, we're right there on that corner of that board, just like, now I've showed you how to do it with jog. If you want, we'll raise this thing back up, and let's just move to some random place, and let's do the same thing with a macro. So if you want to add a macro, and we're calling that one the G56 board, but we're not going to use it. So I'm just going to name this G56 board, and let's just say move. Move to 56. This is the description you can go in and look at to see what it was all about that you did. And I'm going to put 256 from 54. Okay. So now we're going to write the code. We're going to go G0, rapid move, G90, and absolute, G0, G90. Now we're going to base that off of G54, this lower left corner, instead of G53, which was machine position earlier, remember. We're basing this one off of G54, and then we're going to have to call up G20, remember, because we got to tell it we're calling this in inches. Now we can say X. I wrote 16.332, 232, 16.232, and Y 24.586. Okay. And we're going to add the new macro. Now when we push that one, which is G56 board, yeah, that's going to move. It's based off of this corner, but it's still going to move to that same spot. If we hit G56, bam, it moved right there, just like in the same way. If you'll notice, up here in the gray is your coordinates from machine position. So if we would have written that code to be based on G53, we would have had to have 16.822 and minus 24.176. And if you don't believe me there, we can go back and say, okay, I don't want to base off of that. I want to always base off the machine 0, because it doesn't change. It's always back there. This may change. G54 may change around the table. So in most cases, it's not going to be smart to use your G54 to be pulling macros from, because that could be all over the place. So now we're just in some random place here. Let's go in and fix that macro on the G56. So touch those 3 little dots there to go in and edit that. And all we're going to need to do here is change G54 to G53, and then change these X and Y positions to what we just wrote down, which is 16.822. Got too many ones in there. 16.822, and the Y was at minus 24.176. And now we've got G0, G90, G53, G20, and all that in there. I didn't get my decimal in there. That would have been a disaster. Make sure you're getting your decimals and your negatives and everything in there. Now we're going to update that macro. And now when we go down here and hit that, we're going to be based off the machine 0, and but we're going to get to that same place either way. Okay? So there you go. I hope that's been helpful to somebody to help you think about what these machine positions mean and what work offsets mean, and why it may not be important, or it might not be a good idea to be using G56 and 7s and all these numbers, because they're really not, they're just not that, there's not really a reason to be doing that, because you can pull a 0 from anywhere you want. I could pull a 0 from this hole if I wanted to and do anything on this table. You can set your 0 anywhere you want. It's just that in your drawing, when you make your G code over here, you've got to be based on wherever this 0, see this, where you've set that up over here in your work, your job setup here. When you set where that's at, see it says lower left. You know, if I put that in the center, then it's going to move the 0 to here, and everything we just set is no good. It just, you have to be set in your drawing when you make a G code. And then when you create your G code, now I want to show you the G code that I created off of this earlier, why it's important. If I was to do a G56 0, I would definitely need to have that written in the G code, and you can edit that real easy. So let's go in here and find that G code, and I believe it's right here. All right, here's my G code. So if you'll notice at the first of my G code, and this is the way I've got my post processor created, and that's the ones I've added into the long mill file section. You're welcome to go in and use any of the post processors that I've edited, and I can show you, and I have a video on my YouTube here too of showing you how to go in and set that. But I've got G0, G90, G54, and G17 and G20 as my startup code here. And so if you was to use a G56 work offset and then you make your program, it's not going to work because this G54, all you got to do is pull this G code up, come in here and change that to say G55, whichever one you used, and then go File, Save, and now you can run the code as long as that's the only place you know that you're, and in this code there's nothing else. But just be careful, either don't put any kind of, you could go in there and just remove that altogether, and it's going to just probably use what's in your controller. It's again a little dangerous to me, and I like to be able to know what the G code is going to do. So let's close this, and we'll go back in and open that back up, and you'll see that it's going to be all over the place because I don't know where we're set. But see, that's in G54. But that's not going to be, it's not going to matter because our G code is going to pull up. So let's close this file, and let's go back and open it back up, the one we just saved. And so it's probably, well, it's still showing to be based on that, because I guess for this to be able to see it, we're going to have to write G55, and maybe to do that you have to close the file and open it after you've changed this. I've never done this because I don't think it's a good idea. If we set that to G55 here, okay, let's see what it's going to do if we load that file again. And I think it's just simulation is what it's seeing. It's not, it's still going to run the G code correctly even if you don't mess with this. But this is see, now it's showing. I really don't think the simulation is reading this right, because we're based off of right now it thinks we're at 6 inches, and we told it G55, which is, we may have set G55 over there. See what it looks like if we do a G56, G54. See, that's not changing nothing. So let's see where G55 moves us to. Oh, it moves it from there. So as you can see, this program is going to shift everything way off from where it really is, because we're just not right when you do that. So that's what I mean. Things are not so cut and dry if you don't base them off the same work offset like the G54. You're really looking for problems unless you really know what you're doing. You can do that, but I'm just here to tell you, you're looking for problems playing with G56, 7, 8, whatever you want to do. And yeah, if it was a quick job and you just want to do that, I know you can do that, but believe me, you may not think you will. You're going to mess up. And if you just run that off of, like I've got here, if you just come in, lay something in here, set a 0, so let's just say that none of this stuff was even here. And the way you would normally do a job, I mean, as you know, is you would just say, I'm going to run this job right there, and I'm going to set my 0 right there. So let's turn off all this stuff and just draw something from scratch. So, you know, normally you just say, okay, I'm going to draw something like this, and then I'm going to have to move that to a new layer. Are we even going to be able to see what we're doing here? But now I can turn off this one, and we got that. Okay, yeah, normally you're going to say, okay, I'm going to draw that in my 0 point right there like that. And then, you know, I'm going to do whatever. Let's just say we type in something like this, and I gotta do something like that, and then if we want to be sure that's centered in there, we can do this. Now it's centered in our work deal, which is not what we want, so what we want to do is select this and then go like this, and so then you'll just say, okay, I'm just using that for, you know, maybe I'm going to cut that out, whatever. But anyway, you know what I'm talking about. You're just going to set something, and you're going to just V-carve or whatever you're going to do with it. And we'll just make up something and calculate that. And then that's how that's going to work. And then you're going to preview that, and there you go. And you know, that's how you're normally going to do. You're just going to set up one job and do it based off whatever 0 that you're using, and that's all there is to it. But I don't know if this is useful to you. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about it. Anytime you want to talk to me personally about anything, I can go over anything you want to do or know about. I don't play around with 3D machining too much. I could. I just, you know, if you want to know how to set up machine and machine things and cut something, and you're struggling with how you set your tools or what size tools or anything like that, just holler at me, especially through Facebook, or email me at larrytech54@gmail.com. And on the weekend, I can sit here and do some of this, and we'll go through all this with you if you want. It's pretty simple. You know, I'm a CNC machinist for a living at an aircraft manufacturer, and this is just what I do. So this stuff is just playing around at home. You know, we do metal machining all day, every day. CNC lathe is what I do most of the time, and I like that kind of work even better. But anyway, I hope this has been useful. I'm going to get out of here. No telling how long we wasted time here. So y'all have a good weekend, and we'll see you next time.